Welcome back to Shop Talk for Season 5. I'm Brandy.
And this is James, and we talk about all things related to mental health and cross-cultural workers.
So glad you're here. So we're talking to Eve today. Eve and I completed a couple of pilgrimages together, and we're going to talk about pilgrimages today and just what's that about, why people would do them, and just the history of them and such like that. So, to growing up in Northern California and completing university, Eve enjoyed 20 years living in Tajikistan and Turkey with her family from 1996 to 2016. During that time, she was a mom, cross-cultural worker, educator, and entrepreneur. She transitioned into counseling in 2013 and worked abroad with culturally diverse populations, including refugees and survivors of human trafficking. Eve's life and work overseas provides her with understanding and empathy to journey with clients from diverse backgrounds through the challenges of transition, relocation, and cultural adjustment. Eve received her bachelor's degree in psychology and a California teaching credential from Bethany University in Scottsdale, California. Her master's degree is in clinical psychology, and it's from Simpson University in Redding, California. In her free time, Eve enjoys family time, outdoor activities, reading, traveling, eating unique foods, including cuttlefish croquets, and connection with her church, family, and community and friends. I had to include the cuttlefish croquets in there because those were fire.
Oh,
Yeah.
nasty. They were
Mhm.
nasty.
And Eve and her husband Tim now are leading pilgrimages, couples pilgrimages. Yes.
Yes, we are. Yes.
So wonderful to have you on here today. I've known Eve since 2004. Lived in
It's
Central Ocean
been,
together.
yeah, this is our 20-year anniversary.
Yes. Yeah.
Friendiversary.
We've had some adventures together, so she could tell you stories.
Yes.
Mostly about traveling on trains in Moscow, but we're good. So,
Oh, I just thought of that this morning.
did you?
Yeah, something brought it to mind. I
Mhm.
just, yeah, thinking of you and all of the fun places we've adventured together.
We have. So, Eva's a dear friend, and I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. Good to be here.
We're going to talk about pilgrimages, and I'm going to give a little definition of a pilgrimage. This is from Wikipedia, the source of all knowledge. It's a journey to a holy place, which can lead to personal transformation. Pilgrimages frequently involve a journey or a search of moral or spiritual significance. Typically, it's a journey to a shrine or other location or holy place in a person's belief and faith. But sometimes it can be a metaphorical journey in someone's own belief. Do either of you guys have a different definition or other words you'd like to say?
No, I think that's a good one, actually. Good
Okay.
job, Wikipedia.
Yeah,
Good job, Wikipedia.
some editor did a good job looking that one up. Eve, how
Right.
did pilgrimages come into your life?
Yeah, great question. I originally, when I was 49, was thinking of something that would be a significant and meaningful mid-century mark for me. And so I invited about 8 of my closest friends, female friends from, I think all of them actually were from our days in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, Brandy being one of those, and pretty much, yeah, all 8 of them were interested. But that was also 2020. And so yeah, we all know what happened with that trip.
Oh, so
It
sorry.
got, yeah, it got postponed. So then the next year is when we were trying again, and by then everybody else, or everybody that had originally said, oh yeah, possibly, or yes, then yeah, it wasn't working out for them. So it was just Brandy and I then for that trip. And it ended up being 2022. And our husbands were really pouting because they weren't invited because it was a ladies' trip. And so we were kind of, Brandy and I, going back and forth on that. And, the guys being like, oh, it's going to be so cool. And, yo, you're a lucky duck and all that. And I was like, hey, we could invite the guys, but with the rule that it's either both husbands or none. We're not just taking one of the husbands. And so we decided we would ask the guys. And I think it was like 6 minutes later that Randy messaged back and she said, Tracy's in. And I said, Tim's in too. And so thus the couple's Camino was born.
Had you thought of other ones, or was it mainly like the Camino was the one you had in your mind and your heart?
The Camino is the one that I had in my mind and heart because a couple, their names are the Simons, Jeff and Sarah Simons. And we had become friends with them, like virtual friends, because they lived in Spain and we lived in California at the time. And basically, we knew what they did. And so I was wanting to do my first Camino with Sarah, a women's Camino with Sarah, but the timing of that didn't work out. And yeah, she had a couple canceled Caminos because of COVID too. And yeah, so we just became friends through that. And then I was like, well, can I can I buy your training guide and you know, train with you that way? And yeah, had some life coaching sessions with her to help me get prepared. So that's where the idea started and kind of grew from there.
And we had Jeff on the podcast in September to talk about sabbaticals too. So might be
Good.
familiar with our listeners. Yeah,
Yeah, the way between.
so the Camino is probably the best known pilgrimage. There are
Hmm.
other ones out there, but it's started in the ninth century. And I think the story goes as a farmer body found St. James relics in a field. Is that right? And so I don't know how I think he felt like the Lord led him to that. So anyway, the relics were placed in a cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. And so people began walking and having pilgrimages to see the relics. And this started in the ninth century. And it's been going pretty much since then. I think you can start from various places in Europe. When we lived in Berlin, there were Camino signs there, but most people complete their pilgrimages in Spain, or there is a route that starts in Portugal too. But it can take anywhere from like, you can take a week, you can take 6 weeks. Really, you could take any amount of time to walk a portion of it. But I think the most common way to do it is to take a week and walk for what 100 kilometers, and that's when you can officially get your certificate that you've completed it. When you and a lot of people end at the cathedral in Santiago, so pretty well known. It's in 2023 there were over 400,000
Mm,
pilgrims on the route. Amazing. That was,
amazing.
I think, 100-fold increase in the from the 10 years before that. But James, you were
Wow.
looking it up, and like hundreds of years ago, there were what? How many people?
Still
Like,
hundreds of thousands. I mean, you go back like
mhm.
1,000 years and there's still 100,000 people walking the Camino. It was a lot less supported then, so a little more rustic, but it kind of there's this just this deep, deep culture of pilgrimage and along at least the main arteries that are still connecting to Santiago now. Like we could start one from here, but it would take a lot more than 6 weeks to get all the way up to northern Spain. But they're
Hmm.
there. The signs are there. People, will see a pilgrim and wish them a buen camino, and it's a fun culture around what it means to be a pilgrim. And people get into it, I think, for a lot of different ways. And I'd love to look at like what would be some of the reasons to do a pilgrimage. I mean, it's a great walk, but what are some of the deeper components that make it worthwhile?
Yeah, and really quick before we look at the components, when we lived in Northern California, we lived really close to the Pacific Crest Trail,
Mm.
which runs from Canada to Mexico. And so I read a book of this woman who did the PCT, and that kind of got the wheels turning on this, multi-day trek kind of idea, which is different from a pilgrimage, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, there's a lot of people who do the PCT and do it for different reasons, but not so many who do it for spiritual reasons. And and of course you can do it, or there's like the Appalachian Trail. There's different places in the US that you could do a multi-day trek and just have a spiritual component to it. But the Camino already has this spiritual component built in, essentially. And so, yeah, I love the idea of history, and America's a new country, newer country, so we don't have that kind of history, and we don't have the remains of St. James buried anywhere. We don't have church history really. We don't have, yeah. Anyway, so I like the idea of being a part of something that's been going on since the ninth century. But really, the model that I love is, when Jesus was asked, "What's the greatest commandment?" He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength." And I think strength there is referring to physical strength, so heart, soul, mind, and body. And the reason why he didn't say, or I think the reason why he didn't say, love me with all your heart, is because he knows we're created as holistic beings. He knows that we're created with all those parts of us, and so he's looking for a whole person response in relationship with us, relationship to him, and him to us. So yeah, I think a whole person response, heart, soul, mind, and body in our lives is really what is how things work best and really how we're created to respond to things, but so often don't. So often it's one or two of those things. If you think of just like sitting in church, we're sitting, we're not moving most of the time, unless maybe you go to a church where people dance or, move more in worship or something. But yeah, there's a lot of sitting that we do and listening or, learning through listening. And yeah, it's not using whole body, right?
I heard it
Whole
described one
person.
time. It's like coming up to the whole ocean, and the whole ocean was all the ways we have to experience all of who God is with a tiny little straw, because we're usually only approaching Him with just a tiny part of ourselves, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
just our mind sitting in a pew or just usually not all of us. So we're missing
Right.
out on a lot of the fullness of who
Exactly.
God is because we're only coming in with a tiny part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And he's
Yeah.
created us
Yeah.
to be integrated, to have to live fully in all those ways. But like you said,
Mm-hmm.
that often doesn't happen. So how is it that a Camino or walking or doing a pilgrimage, how can that sort of integrate our physical beings into the experience of worshiping and knowing God?
Well, just through the fact of, moving our bodies all through the day, the two, Brandy, that you and I have done together, we were usually on the trail about 8:30 or 9, and usually at our destination town between 3 and 5, depending on the distance of the day. So we were just moving our bodies, right, all day long from 8:30 to 4:30, say. And all along the way, we're seeing things and we're hearing things and we're experiencing things in nature or even in the little towns, right? Like there's plazas and churches and people we're passing and people we have conversations with, and then there's yeah, just the ocean. I mean, the sea is so beautiful, and beautiful flowers and cute cows and all the things. We're experiencing all these things along the way and taking something in of the creator through his creation. We're receiving something from the creator. And yeah, it's because we're moving our body all along the way to get to those things. We're not driving past quickly. We're not staring at a screen. We're not doing anything. Hopefully that's distracting us. We're moving slowly but moving. And yeah, it really just lets everything connect, heart, soul, mind, and body can align, I think, when that's happening in a way that just can't happen when we're still.
What needs to be different between just going on a hike or doing like the PCT or the ACT or doing some sort of famous trail? What's the difference between that trail and then the walk on the pilgrimage where you're still encountering something that's using your whole senses, but what takes it to a pilgrimage level?
Yeah, I think what takes it to a pilgrimage level is your intention. And so I think with that intention, you could do the ACT or PCT and have a very similar experience. One thing that's, I think, drastically different is, excuse me, the like these little churches and plazas and things that you can stop at or at the very least pause at along the way, so that there's some, I mean, every little village you come into has a church, and so yeah, there's also like cemeteries or other historical places that yeah are weaving in the history of it, the church history piece of it as well. So that makes it different, but mostly I think it's just people's intention.
Mm.
Because we go on long hikes with friends and we have a fun day, we have a good time, we might even talk about spirituality or talk about our relationship with the Lord and share hard things or those kinds of things, so it can be really life-giving. But that's because we're being intentional about those conversations, or we're being intentional to spend that time with people. So yeah, the multi-day piece of it, I think, is another really unique part of it, because we don't often do that. We did that in training. My husband and I, like, we would, basically we have 2 days. So we would hike on the Saturday and then we would hike again on Sunday and then we're back to work on Monday, So yeah, unless you take time off and again, just be really intentional about it in the US, then it's hard to find something that really measures up, because you don't have that, you have this whole week carved out or 6 weeks carved out, whatever you have, and you just are getting on the trail every day, getting on the Camino.
And I think it even takes a couple of days to really get your whole body and mind into the whole process of walking into the rhythm of it. Because the
Yeah.
first few days you're just kind of orienting yourself to it. And then I mean, I haven't done this. I don't know if I have time to do it, but I think even like a multi-week Camino would be so interesting because you have so much more time to just get into the rhythm of it and get used to just the walking and just the
Hmm.
being. I think a lot of that too is just sort of having an opportunity to clear your mind and be present in your body with what your body's experiencing as you're hiking. And it's not always pleasant.
Hmm.
Like
Right.
there, so
There's some pain.
there's pain to it. So I wonder if you could talk about what if someone's getting ready to embark on a pilgrimage for the first time, like what are some things that they should expect like along the way?
Yeah, expectations. Always good to look at the expectations. And I'm thinking of those big categories, but also with the caveat that for each person, it's so individualized, right? And so, yeah, for some of us, it's hard for some people to let go of the idea, for instance, of like how far we're going to go each day, right? We want to go, 12 to 15 miles. And so we got to hit these benchmarks and we got to be at this certain place by this certain time. And it's like, no, actually, the expectation is just that, yes, we are going to get to our destination village or town because that's where we have accommodations for the night, that we want to eat there and sleep there. But if we get there at 3 or we get there at 6, that part doesn't matter. We can rest as much as we need to along the way. So I guess an expectation around needing to release your expectations,
Mm.
which is really hard for us, right? We have our days scheduled and we have all of these like benchmarks and goals and different things. And so yeah, it's just you're gonna get up, you're going to put on your shoes and your clothes and they're gonna stink most likely. Day one and day two, they smell fine. Day three, four, five. I mean, yeah, you're not smelling that good. You're not looking that good. But you don't care. You eat food and you get on the trail and you just start your day. It's too simple. It sounds too simple probably. And so yeah, an expectation that you can just live this sort of simplistic or simplified, maybe is a better word, existence for a whole week. I mean, it just blows my mind even as I think of it now. Like we've done it twice, right, Brandy? But it's just like you got to see it to believe it. You
Yeah.
really just, yeah, it's hard to put words to it.
It's such a time warp experience. That's the word I use to describe it most because
Hmm.
it's like you said, there's no schedule and there's almost no way to prepare for that. This idea,
Hmm.
if I just wake up, if I'm hungry, I eat at the next town, and if I'm tired, I sit.
Hmm.
If I'm thirsty, I drink. And it's just, yeah, time seems to go by both fast and slow, where it's like, wow, I've been walking for no time at all, and I've 3 hours down the road, and at the same time, yeah, it's just a fascinating way of being. Like I just felt like my very existence was so different on the Camino than can in any way be replicated, even if I try to take a vacation in normal life.
Hmm.
I don't know if you
Right.
guys
Yeah.
experienced that.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
was it for you,
Love
James?
that.
Because you hiked the French Way with some friends of yours, and like, what was your whole experience like?
Yeah, so I kind of formed a retreat. So I like put together a devotional guide, and we kind of had a focus, and but it was still friends. I was celebrating 40, so kind of this milestone, and it was just enjoyable. It wasn't. I don't think most of us weren't particularly struggling. One of my friends had some muscular issues that led to the other three of us carrying his bag for 2.5 days, which was like formative for us as a group, as the three of us would share his bag around, and that was kind of a fun for I think all of us just to experience the needing of help, but also being able to respond to that. So that was kind of a unique experience. I think for myself, that intention that Eve was talking about, like the first day, my focus was on how I know God loves me. So I just asked that question every time my mind wound up blank or distracted. So I asked God that question, I don't know, 60, 70 times over the course of our first day. And it was just fun to like draw my attention back to the moment, to where I was at. And it was just a really fun way to have a relationship with God that's so different than my normal life, which just kept happening through conversation,
Mm,
through strangers, through being in nature, through getting to experience some beauty and some ancient church history, and to know that this path has had people praying on it for 1,000 years is just really
mm,
cool.
mhm. Yeah, love that. I've explained this some, I know, to you, Brandy, but just for the listeners, the idea that I feel like God's word is this love letter to us, that I read it and I see in the pages, yes, he loves me, and he loves, his creations. He loves, yeah, all of us. But the second Camino, this last one that we just did in September, was like, instead of a love letter, it was like a picture postcard love letter. So he was showing me, instead of telling me so much in words, he was just showing me like this extravagant love, and it was for me. And we were all seeing those same beautiful views. So it's just, it's kind of funny for me to be like, this is all for me, but it was. I mean, that's exactly what he communicated to me. But I think a lot out of the 10 of us, like, yeah, a lot of us are feeling like this is all for me. So it's like, yeah, and that's God's that way, and his love is, endless and boundless. So it can be all for me and all for you.
No one else in all of the history of time has had that view that you had with through your eyes and
Hmm.
your life experience in that moment.
Yeah.
You're
That
it.
moment. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated just the act of being present as we were hiking and just being aware of, yeah, the different trees around us, the different sounds around us, and even like the way people would garden and like do their courtyards and things like that. Like just
Mm,
what was common in those areas and how that was a new experience for me to see that. And I guess the word presence was just what kind of filled my mind. It's just his nearness and all of that, and his creation, and just his gentleness, and all of that was
mm,
really a precious thing. So
mm,
yeah, and the
yeah.
coffee, oh my goodness,
Right.
the coffee shops. I haven't had good coffee like that since coming home, and it was the whole experience of just like having a rest and having like these sweet people in this little local coffee shop service coffee to me.
Hmm.
I wonder if you just have any perspective on the benefit of doing something like that in a group or as a community, or and you did this last one as a couples intentionally. Like, what is that like?
Well, yeah, the two were so different, with the first one being just the four of us, with, yeah, the Walterlands and the Austins, and this last one being 10 of us. So two, yeah, I'm picturing it two different ways, because it was, more organic, let's say, when it was just us and the Walterlands, because yeah, we just had less people weighing in, and it was pretty easy. It felt really easy, actually, just to be like, okay, we're hungry, let's stop. And yeah, we decided that together, but the four of us were pretty synced up, which was awesome. And then this one, yeah, just 10, 10 people. It's a lot of personalities. It's a wider range of abilities, ages, all of those things. And so there was more to pay attention to. But I think I felt like it was just such a benefit, in the sense of, yeah, we were meeting new people. Tim and I knew everybody, and but we were the only ones who knew everybody. They were meeting new people and connecting on the trail and stuff. And so yeah, anyway, I think there's benefits to it, and how we in community are, kind of to your point, James, of like, you were carrying your friend's pack, and we didn't have anyone who needed their pack carried, but yeah, we all needed support at some point in time, in different ways, emotionally or physically, spiritually. And yeah, there's a lot of people to offer that. And we kind of joked, because Tim and I were like, one of us would be the leader, and one of us would be the rear guard, and then we would switch at lunchtime. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
right.
so anyway, that was our first time to ever lead a Camino. So we were experimenting with how we were going to lead it. But when people were melting down, um, often it was somewhere in in between Tim and I,
Right.
like we weren't the one in closest proximity to the person melting, and
Mm,
often the person melting was reaching out to their spouse for support first,
right.
which is awesome. It's one of the cool things about a couple's Camino. So we didn't ever end up being like the triage person on the meltdowns, is what I'm trying to say. So it
Did
worked out pretty good.
did
Uh,
couples tend to walk together?
Not
Okay.
necessarily.
yeah,
No, yeah.
yeah.
So everyone just kind of, yeah, walked at their own
Mm,
pace and kind of mix and match with like, yeah, if they're in a conversation, then they just like continue on with like, two men doing that, chatting here and yeah, two gals here, whatever. So anyway, yeah, it was just mix and match the whole time. But yeah, at those meltdown points, it did end up being the couples together supporting each other, which I thought was sweet. And then it also made it easier for Tim and I
I
because
know.
right.
My second and third days were the hardest. Second day was very hard, and Tracy was
uh
trying to walk with me. I was like, "Don't walk with me. Don't talk to me. Don't." So then he didn't. He held back, and I was like, "Wait, you don't want to talk to me? Is that what's wrong with you? You want to talk to me?" And so that was great. But Tim was the back person on that one, and he was so great because I knew he was waiting for me, but he wasn't making it so obvious, and I knew he was just holding back and giving me space. But he was great about that.
For
and then
me,
there's the day I was the rear guard, and I want to talk about silence for a minute when we
yeah.
have time. But anyway, that it was during our time of silence and solitude, and I was the rear guard, and then Brandy was ahead of me, probably like 30 yards or something, and she missed the turnoff. And so I broke my vow of silence. Brandy, come back, turn here.
It's funny. I
Worth
think
it.
he still mostly did it through hand motions.
But totally worth it to break the
It's
vow
great to go in the right
to save
direction.
you an extra 10 kilometers.
Yes.
We
Okay,
had
so
a
talk.
similar situation on ours because we would do the first, and I'm sure Jeff Simons probably got his introduction to the Camino the same place I did, but we do the first, what was it, 10K in silence, and I can't remember, there was something that happened and we're trying to communicate, and I was just like, guys, this isn't. You're not going to get in trouble or be punished if you need to say something. So like, one of the guys was like, "Oh, can I stop and I don't use the bathroom or get a water or something?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." Just funny.
Yeah,
Okay,
I know. Get in
so
trouble. Okay, go ahead.
no, you've talked a little bit about the silence and solitude aspect of it and why
Mm,
that's important.
Mhm. So I think it's important because it is a spiritual discipline. It can be so beneficial. It gets very little press. It's not really the spiritual discipline that everyone is into. And yeah, especially in my tradition growing up, like the praying out loud, praise and worship, like give testimonies, like all of the things that are like the more demonstrative things that we put words to, like, yeah, that's what I grew up seeing. And like nobody talked about silence and solitude or even knew what that was. So now we do. And now we try to practice it. It's very difficult for most of us. Like even so, I'll just take me and Brandy for instance. We are really good at chatting and listening and connecting with our words. We can talk for hours and hours and hours, and we'll never run out of anything to any topic. We've got the next topic and the next topic. So we're good at it. We're not so good at, or I'll speak for myself. I'm not so good at the silence and solitude because it feels pretty uncomfortable. Number one. Number two, my mind races at a million miles an hour, and when I'm silent, I notice that even more and think, "Oh my, wow, there's a lot going on in there," And so, yeah, that can be uncomfortable too because it's hard to quiet that. And it is a practice for me, and it is something that I want to do more of. And on the Camino, I think it's a really important part of it because you as you know, when you stop talking, you can start using your other senses. So you can start hearing things, smelling things, seeing things, sensing things that you can't if you're talking. You can also check in with yourself in a way that you can't when you're talking, and check in with the Lord in a way that you can't when you're talking. So all of those opportunities open up for you. And I think that's pretty amazing. And so, yeah, we did an hour, like we switched it up, but it was either like the first hour of the morning and then the first hour of the afternoon, or yeah. And basically we would just say, silence and solitude time, and then everybody played along, or yeah, if you needed to talk to somebody about a bathroom break or something. Yeah. But yeah, we got a lot of good feedback actually about silence and solitude, because it's the thing most of us, again, wouldn't choose on our own. And then you feel awkward if you're the one who wants it and you're like, hey guys, silence and solitude, and then everyone else is chatting away. And you feel like the one who's like trying to be super spiritual or something. And you're not. You're just the one who, like all of us, could benefit from the silence and solitude. So,
It
yeah.
is interesting how paying attention to our minds and like just how they race
Mm,
and just 90 to nothing. And so I think that's such a great opportunity to pay
hmm
attention to like how constant that can be and what a toll that could be on
hmm
us, and just to have the practice of slowing down, giving yourself permission to be quiet, and like giving yourself permission to, because sometimes I think we have to constantly be thinking and processing and things like that, but there's so much benefit and beauty to just being that, like you said, it's not one of the popular disciplines, but
Least
it's a good one.
popular, probably.
Yeah.
Part of what I think makes it significant for me is that we're doing stuff that we just don't do every day.
hmm
That's part of the benefit of doing a pilgrimage. You're taking in time aside and saying, I'm going to engage with myself, with my friends or my spouse and God in a way that's different than normal. That's why I
hmm
love like doing the significant time, whether it's an hour or a certain distance of solitude and quiet, just to give our brains a chance to engage differently with what's going on around us. So
Yeah,
I love that you're
absolutely.
incorporating stuff that is getting people out of their normal, doing something different and different way of being.
hmm
I wonder if
Right.
you, specifically for cross-cultural workers, because I think we have a lot of cross-cultural workers that listen to the podcast, and how participating in a pilgrimage could be like especially helpful for them.
Yeah, and what you were just saying there, James, it just gives us these opportunities that we don't usually have, and the benefits that go with those opportunities, right? Of heart, soul, mind, and body alignment and integration. And I think cross-cultural workers need that more than most, because let's just think about the host culture versus passport culture. There's disintegration that's happening because you have to disconnect, right, from passport culture in some way to acculturate and connect with your host culture. So anyway, you do that for however many years. So for us, for 20 years, we're trying to, be connected to a culture that's not our own and also not our majority religion. And so yeah, there's just all of these things that are like disintegrated or disconnected. So anything that can reintegrate or reconnect us, realign us is even more necessary. And then also as cross-cultural workers, we're getting less of those opportunities, right? We need it more, but we have it available to us less, or we're less intentional to find it. There's things available now, which is awesome. In the 90s, they didn't exist. In the 2000s, they didn't either, mostly. So now we have all these good things available, but we just really have to avail ourselves of them, talk our sending agencies into funding them, or talk supporters into funding them, or however that's going to work. I mean, it's essential, I think. Yeah.
And like we talked about, the practice of silence and solitude isn't like, most popular. And I think for cross-cultural workers too, are so much about doing and looking at results and like what are we doing for, the kingdom of God. And
Mhm.
the idea of slowing down a little bit and just listening and being, I think, is foreign to a lot of cross-cultural workers. And to have that time set aside to practice that, I think is so, I think, beneficial to the overall health of that, the work, and also the person, like in doing the person doing the work too, that I think it could build like resilience for the long term.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's the, that age old leading on empty kind of metaphor. You got to put something in the tank so you have something to pour out, and then you put something back in the tank and then you pour out. So it's why we should be practicing Sabbath, why we should be practicing spiritual disciplines, why we should be doing these things. There's a pattern to it, or it's meant to be a pattern, or the way that the Lord set it up is, you know, one day out of every week, like, I mean, I don't know, it's almost too simple. And then, yeah, somehow we missed it and didn't know that, oh, that thing about Sabbath, oh, that's something I'm actually supposed to be doing. Okay.
In the
Mm,
Ten Commandments. We
I
do
know, it's
the
right.
one we do because God did.
Mm,
That's a unique
yeah.
characteristic about it, taking a Sabbath. If you're
Hmm.
trying to set somebody up, let's say somebody's listening and they're like, wow, I really need to do a pilgrimage, whether it's the Camino or I know some people do St. Cuthbert's Way in the UK. There's some that are
Hmm.
around. One of my colleagues did an Ignatian pilgrimage on the other side of Spain. What would you say are some like components to like start looking into, to prepare, to perhaps garnish some other friends to do it? What would your advice be?
Yeah, well, there's a lot online. You can just search online and kind of see, yeah, where the different routes are and kind of see what you're interested in there. We've only done them with the Way Between with Jeff and Sarah Simons. And we that's been an awesome experience for us. So I could highly recommend them. And then just, yeah, basically think of who do you know that is maybe even remotely interested, or you've had, bits and pieces of some conversation. Oh, I heard about this, or yeah, oh, I just had a friend who did the Camino, or those kinds of things pop up. And then you can, yeah, just kind of piggyback on those conversations like, hey, would you ever be interested? Or, I'm interested. I would love to do that with a friend or with a colleague, yeah, you just kind of pop it into the conversations and see who's interested. You'd be surprised.
And I think the Camino is great because it's so well traveled that and especially with the French route, which we haven't done. We've done the northern route, but it was still really well set up. But I mean, there are albergues, which are pilgrimage hostels specifically for pilgrims set up along
Mhm.
the way. There are places that have pilgrim meals specifically for pilgrims, and it's very well marked, it's very safe. It's just I think it's a good one. I mean, to start with or just to stay with because it's so well known.
Mhm.
Um, so I wonder, you talked a little bit about it, but your first and second pilgrimage, like how are those different for you from each other?
Well, really different. I think just because that first one, Brandy, you did all the accommodations and made all the reservations. And so,
Mm.
yeah, you shouldered a lot of the preparation work with that and then all along the way. And I felt like, yeah, we were along for the ride more. So it was really in a good way, really not stressful. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Second time around, Tim did all that for the 10 of us. And
A lot.
so, yeah, yeah. So he shouldered that responsibility, which I appreciate. Thank you, Tim, as you listen. I appreciate it. But yeah, leading it was a very different experience. And of course, when you're leading, you want it to be a good experience for people, but it's going to be hard because, yeah, it's pushing us to our limits, really, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and mentally. And so, it's going to be hard, and you can't, and are really not supposed to buffer that hard. Yeah, you're meant to feel it, and so, yeah, anyway, and then Tim and I haven't led. We used to lead things together all the time back in the day, and since we moved to America 8 years ago, we haven't led much together. And so we were like, okay, let's see, buddy, how this goes. So it's fun.
Brings up a good point for me of it really depends on what somebody's looking for out of the experience. If they're
Hmm.
really wanting to have more time to just be, to go deeper with God, then I would encourage them to look for someone like Sentwell or the Way Between that can do all those logistics. Because it
Hmm.
just runs in the back of your mind. Like the one I led, I've got the phone numbers of WhatsApps and making sure the beds are there, the getting restaurants is it's just another thing to also do, especially if you're doing it for a group of people. So if you can
Hmm.
find somebody leading it like yourself, it does take a lot of that part of your mind off. So you don't have to
Hmm.
be thinking about it. You can just kind of follow somebody else's leadership, which is Perhaps for some, would be for me, I think more restful because you're not having to work out ahead. You can just kind of be in the present.
Hmm.
I appreciate that about you and Tim, the second trip, because I know that you guys were on. Even after we finished in the evening, you were there were constantly WhatsApp texts going out, like, what time are we leaving in the morning? When are we having dinner? Blah, 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 blah. And you guys
Mhm.
had to be on with that. And you were, and you were always so kind and gracious with all of us the whole time. But I know like that was an extra part of it for you guys. So
Yeah. And we, yeah, those first couple days we were kind of working out the kinks between us
Mhm.
of, again, we were experimenting with who's going to do what and how we're going to split the leadership role. And yeah, so kind of to your point, Brandy, of like those first couple days, we're release and receive were two words we used, of each day, like what do I want to release and what do I want to receive? And yeah, even in Tim and I working that out in the leadership role, like of, yeah, we were releasing and receiving things. And yeah, so we were learning a lot along the way. I don't know if you guys are okay with me reading this post. You shared it, Brandy, with us, but I think that it is okay, here it is. And I would give credit to the person, but it's not anybody I know. So thanks, Brandy, for finding it. The Camino has truly captured my heart. The best way I know to describe it is as an intense emotional cleanse, and I would add spiritual cleanse. The exhaustion, struggle, challenge, and wonder are like a rolling pin, pressing, purging, and flattening every little malignant lump of anxiety out of your soul. I think we've forgotten our primal needs: movement, light, water, dirt, laughter, a destination, and an unclenched mind, the unchanging fundamental compounds of joy.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, well
that
said.
is right there. Thank you for being on the podcast today, Eve. I could talk to you like a whole lot longer about life, everything, Camino memories, Sweet Ninja Knees. That was Tracy's name on the trip. And
Sweet ninja knees.
sweet. But it's been a delight to talk to you today. We're going to include your website on our
Mhm.
show notes, but do you have anything else you'd like first to include, or any books related to the Camino or things like that?
No, there's a ton of good stuff out there. So I think, yeah, let people kind of look on their own. We used a lot that were recommended by the Way Between. So if you want to, yeah, include that website, people can get on there and see what their resources are. That's really what we've mostly used. So
Are you guys
Thanks
going
so
to
much.
lead another couple one?
yeah, we're gonna do another one in September 2025, and we're gonna do a chunk of the coast of Portugal
Mm.
route. So yeah, we the group of us this year met these gals from Ohio that were originally from Poland, I think is how it went. And they were saying that they had enjoyed the coastal route in Poland. And yeah, we had heard that from a few others. So yeah, we're gonna do a week of that in September. So yeah,
Oh,
pretty
wow.
fun.
The famous quote from the Polish gals, "You'll get smarter." Was that it?
Yeah.
They're not wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And the link is live on the Way Between for the couples Camino. So
Oh,
that's
great.
kind of fun. It just went live.
Sign up.
Thanks, Eve.
Yeah, fun to be with you guys.
Living in Tajikistan and Turkey with her family from 2016. Nope. Start over.
Okay, Zoom. We need you to be our friend today.
Okay, and what time do you eat dinner in Spain?
Like 8.
Okay,
So
you're fine.
Yeah.
You're good.
So we got 3
Okay.
hours.